joined today by Chase Oliver, Libertarian for President. Tell us, why are you running for this office?
Well, I'm running because I think voters deserve to have, first and foremost, more than two choices on the ballot that I don't feel really represent the full spectrum of the electorate. As a libertarian, I'm running to push our policies and principles forward, the ideas of limited government and the power of individual liberty. And really, as a 39-year-old, I'm running because I think it's time that millennials have more of a say in our politics and our governance. And it's time for us to rise up in electoral politics. So I'm happy to be running for all those reasons.
You touched on it a little bit, but can you describe the platform of the Libertarian Party?
Yeah, broadly speaking, the Libertarian Party believes in the non-aggression principle. Ideally, that if you are not doing anything that is causing harm against another person, there should be no harm being brought against you, and that includes the force of government. So we seek to limit government to its minimal size while still preserving civil liberties for each and every person and supporting things like free markets and property rights.
Why are you running as a member of the Libertarian Party as opposed to, the two main ones that everyone thinks of?
Well, I feel like if you look at our platform, if you go to our website, lp.org, you can see the Libertarian Party's platform. And I feel like it's the one that most closely aligns with me politically. But what made me a libertarian was because I was a former Democrat who was upset about the Democrats not ending the wars after Obama got elected. And I happened to find the Libertarian Party. They were doing outreach at the Atlanta Pride Festival in 2010. And so that's what got me literally waved into the tent, hearing about the party, hearing about the philosophy. And it really just made a lot of things click with me that just really, with the Republicans or the Democrats, just didn't really sink in with my own personal values and my own personal beliefs.
What difficulties come with running as a third-party candidate?
Well, there's the challenge of having to overcome, the definite financial and kind of media outsized influence that Republicans and Democrats have. I think that's why I'm thankful for being on programs just like this one. But with that comes, the individual challenges of educating the voters what we're about, making sure voters know that we're on the ballot, and of course, doing the challenges of getting on the ballot. We just finished a petition drive in Pennsylvania that took a lot of man hours and a lot of work to get myself and my running mate Mike Tremont on the ballot. Republicans and Democrats don't have to overcome those hurdles. So there's a lot of challenges that come with being outside of the two-party system, but we welcome those challenges, and we hopefully will break those challenges down so it's easier for candidates to run in the future.
What does a libertarian have to do to get on the ballot?
Well, here in the state of Pennsylvania, it required us to collect thousands of ballot access petition signatures. We've had to do that in states all over the country where you don't have automatic ballot access. Of course, the automatic ballot access came with us winning a certain percentages in elections previously that we had to petition to get on those ballots. So really, there's the challenge of getting out there, knocking on doors, standing outside of post offices to get individuals to sign your ballot access petition signature, of course. And even if you're required to get, say, 5,000 signatures, you really need to collect 10,000 because a lot of them will just get thrown out arbitrarily.
Before we get too far, let's talk a little bit about you. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Snellville, Georgia. I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, but since the age of 7, I lived in Georgia. And I grew up in a small town called Snellville, about 30 minutes outside of Atlanta, suburban community, had the standard, two-parent household. Both my parents worked throughout my childhood. I went to a great public school, Brookwood High School. And that's kind of, my upbringing is, raised in the evangelical church, even though I now identify as an Episcopalian. But yeah, I'm a good old Southern boy from Georgia.
What do you do for a living?
Well, right now I'm full-time running for president, but that's not really a living so much as a task that I'm doing. But before I was running for president, my most recent forays were into the world of human resources, HR management for a company. And then before that, I worked in maritime logistics, helping to move goods from one side of the world to the other on ships. And then I spent 13 years of my life working in restaurants, starting out as a dishwasher and then kind of working my way through that industry. So I have certainly lived the life of somebody who's had to, live that retail and customer service life. So I know all about those stresses, and it's prepared me for the stresses of politics, that's for sure.
How did you get into politics?
Well, I first got started as an anti-war activist. When the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq started, it was when I was in high school and graduating. And I saw people that I knew going to go fight these wars that, especially in the case of Iraq, I knew we didn't need to be fighting at all, that, we kind of cherry picked the intelligence to get into Iraq. And so that's what got me on the front line being active politically. I've always been kind of engaged in politics and interested in it, but that's what really got me, off from being an observer to an active participant. And then from there on, I've been kind of an immigration rights activist, criminal justice rights advocate. So I've been doing a lot of activism areas, and then it kind of transitioned into being a candidate.
Who are some of your political influences?
Well, when I think about some of the great political influences, certainly there's folks like a guy named Harry Browne, who ran for president as a libertarian in 1996 and 2000. He wrote a fantastic book, and he's kind of the model libertarian candidate, I think, in terms of policy and in terms of temperament, these kinds of things. I've always had an affection for Milton Friedman, who's an economist. He had a great program called Free to Choose. And he also had a book, Free to Choose, as well, that is a great entryway to libertarianism. And the late David Bose, who just passed away this past year, he wrote a book called The Libertarian Mind. And I think it's one of the best entryways into kind of the libertarian philosophy ever. And he is a wonderful person I look to as a mentor. And then the guy who brought me in the party, John Mons, he ran for governor of Georgia. Excellent, excellent guy, radical libertarian, Morehouse educated. Ran for governor, first libertarian to ever earn 1 million votes. So he brought me into the party. It's all his fault.
You previously ran for both Senate and Congress in Georgia. What did you learn from these two previous campaigns?
Well, my first campaign was a 9-week breakneck campaign. It was a special election. And there, I kind of had to learn how to campaign under COVID because it was during the height of the pandemic, lockdowns and everything. So I had to kind of be kind of innovative. And so I started campaigning on walking trails and at public parks because that was the only place I knew people were going to. The Senate race was a wholly different thing. It was a whole year of me running. There, I learned the value of retail politics. I knocked on like 3,000 doors in that year. And in the areas where I did door knocking campaigns and outreach campaigns, I did higher in terms of my percentage than the rest of the state. So I really learned the value of getting out there and meeting your constituents face to face as much as possible.
What differentiates you from other people running for the office of president?
Well, I'm not a professional politician, that's for sure. I'm quite a bit younger than I think most of the other people, even outside of the two-party system, that are running for president in this cycle. So I think it gives me a different generational insight into what's going on in this country, the needs that are of the American people. I think what makes me different is I'm a regular working person who's had to work that 40 hours a week, who's had to stretch the paycheck from paycheck to paycheck. I feel the pinch of inflation, like very, very much so when I go to the grocery store. And I think that's something that my two major opponents, Kamala Harris, who's kind of been in government service for 20 years, and Donald Trump, who was born into wealth and opulence, neither of them have really had that regular working person's life that I think really informs me in a way that they just don't have that lived experience. And I think that is a good contrast for me compared to my opponents.
What are some concerns that voters are saying to you on the campaign trail?
Well, I think the biggest concern is those kitchen table issues, things like the economy and inflation. I think that's the number one issue I hear from folks. And then from that, you have like kind of the other major issues that are hitting our politics. I think immigration is a huge one, particularly for women, the right to an abortion or medical freedom. And then I think in particular for families, wanting to know what we're going to do to help provide better education for their kids. And so I think those are probably the four driving issues in this election is the economy, which it always is, immigration, which has been, kind of at crisis levels. And then we see abortion and education kind of pulling right up behind those.
Let's talk more about some of those specific issues as they relate to people in Pennsylvania. What are your views on abortion?
So I am pro-choice. I fully believe that, pro-choice falls right in line with the medical autonomy and medical freedom parts of the libertarian philosophy. We libertarians, we say we want to break down government to its most local level. The most local level in this choice is your individual choice, the individual self-governance you have. And so I would support legislation to make abortion legal up to the point of viability, and then post viability with the sign off of a doctor for the health or life of the mother, which I think is where most Americans are at, while continuing to support the Hyde Amendment, which prevents federal funding to abortion.
Your website says that as president, you will, quote, end wars. How would you do that?
Well, I would start by removing the United States from the war zones that they currently exist in. We still have troops all over the world fighting, and I would first and foremost seek to remove them from those battlefields, and then start removing our military footprint from things like arms sales, where we sold billions and billions of dollars of arms to the Saudis, which then were used to persecute a war in Yemen and starve nearly 1 million people to death. So there is, huge amounts of suffering that happens because we inject ourselves militarily, either directly or through arms sales and military aid around the world. And I think it's a better foreign policy to instead focus on diplomacy and free trade, as opposed to exporting our values with the bomb, the bullet, and the drone.
So you do not support the Russia-Ukraine war, like the United States involvement in the Russia-Ukrainian war or the Israel-Hamas war?
No, I would like to see us remove ourselves militarily from both of those areas. I think in regards to Ukraine, Western Europe can take the lead militarily there if they deem so. I think what we need to do is provide amnesty for any conscripted soldier who doesn't want to fight in that war. I think if you did that, you'd see a lot of Russian deserters, and you'd see the ability to push back across the Russian border and sue for peace. With regards to Gaza, Israel has a right to respond to October 7th. I think the manner in which they've responded has been so heavy-handed and destructive that it's caused the death of tens of thousands of innocent people, destroyed billions of dollars worth of infrastructure. And I don't think the United States needs to be backing that action. I think we need to be supporting peace in the region.
What are your views on gun control in America?
Well, I am what I call 2A all day. I am a very much supporter of the Second Amendment. I would not support any new gun infringements. In fact, I would fight against the ones that currently exist. I think if you are acting in peace and you're not harming anybody, you should be able to own any firearm you want. I think there are things we can do to address gun violence that don't involve infringing upon people's constitutional gun rights.
Lots of Americans are worried about rising inflation. What would you do to help bring those costs back down?
The first thing the United States president can do is to combat the primary driver of inflation, which is debt and deficits. And so if I were elected president, I would insist upon a balanced budget. If it's not balanced, I would veto that budget, forcing Congress to act. But I think, we need to set the goal of balancing our budget immediately, because when we add trillions of dollars of deficit each and every year, our Treasury prints that money to make up for the loss, and it devalues our dollar, it is the primary driver of inflation. I hate to tell people it's not corporate greed. Corporations were greedy a decade ago. They're going to be greedy a decade from now. That will not change. But what is changing is the deficit spending that has exploded over the last few years.
How would you approach the border and immigration policy?
So I want to see a 21st century Ellis Island. I think we need to streamline the process to allow people to come here to work and to start, outputting and getting a job and starting their American dream and what have you. We need to streamline that process by saying anybody who wants to come here, come through a port of entry, declare yourself, do a background check and a health check. And if you're good to go, you should be able to immediately get a visa that allows you to come here to work. That's not instant citizenship, though we should streamline that process as well. But I think what we're seeing is a bottleneck. As people come here wanting to work, they apply for amnesty. We should just streamline that process altogether into what I call a 21st century Ellis Island. 40% of Americans can trace their lineage back to the last great migration wave of Ellis Island through the 19th and 20th century. I think we need to put those principles into place in the 21st century.
Your website says to, quote, fix education, we need to abolish the Department of Education. What problems do you think abolishing the Department of Education would fix?
Well, I think if you just look at the department itself in terms of metrics, it was created during the Carter administration. We put billions and billions of dollars into this department. And what we haven't seen is a correlated rise in reading and math scores. I don't think it is putting good money after bad. I think we can block grant that money back to the states. And when you do that, you're creating 50 laboratories of innovation, 50 different ways for the states to decide how to educate their young people. And what you'll see is the best practices starting to be adopted across the board and the worst practices falling by the wayside. But what you want to create is a marketplace of education so you can see all different ways of doing this and providing more choice for the individual parent and student. And that's how you're going to get ultimately better educational outcomes. The central planning of public education has just proven no matter how much money we throw into it, there's just not that correlated rise in performance. And so I think we need to put in good money after bad and try something different.
You, quote, fully endorse the Voter Bill of Rights. What is that and why do you endorse it?
So the Voter Bill of Rights is a sort of policy. It's a set of policy proposals that was put together by another libertarian who was actually running for the nomination this cycle, a guy named Lars Mapstead. And I honestly thought it was a brilliant piece of policy. So I wanted to make sure we adopted it into our platform as we move forward to both unify the party, but really, it's about changing both how we can get more people on the ballot, providing more choices on the ballot, but also changing the way we vote so that we have broader representation across the ballot. So things like ballot access reforms, ranked choice voting, these kinds of things are going to fully free up and create a broader spectrum of elected officials. I think it would be better for the voter and ultimately better for our republic to have these reforms put in place.
Your running mate is Mike Termat. Can you tell us a bit about him?
Yeah, Mike, he's a wonderful guy. So Mike Termat is he's had two kind of large career paths in his life for over 20 years. He was an economics professor teaching economics at 3 different universities. He is, a fantastic libertarian economics guy. If you ever want to get in the weeds, that's the guy to do it with. But he's also spent the last 10 years of his life, or 10 years of his career rather, being a law enforcement officer in the state of Florida. And so he is somebody who has, both public service experience and practical experience in the economic side of things to be a wonderful running mate for me. In fact, I think it's great that, he is an ex-police officer. I am a former police accountability activist who used to be in the street with like a sign and a bullhorn. And yet we work together along the same aligned issues on things like criminal justice reform. So he's been a wonderful partner in this race. And I couldn't ask for a better running mate.
Take the last few minutes here to tell the people of Pennsylvania why they should vote for you.
Well, I think Pennsylvania should get out and vote for me because if they don't, we're going to be left with a Republican or Democrat winning the White House. And that is the same old. And repeating these same cycles of voting for the lesser of two evils consistently brings us lower quality candidates and lower quality results. I think it's time that we change the way we vote, dare to do something different, dare to vote for who you think has the best platform. I urge you to look at my platform next to Donald Trump's and Kamala Harris's, do a blind taste test, so to speak. And I think you would truly find that without bias, you would like the libertarian policies the most. They would fit most in line with your values. And so I urge Pennsylvanians to give us a good, honest look, check us out, and please vote for us either as early voting or on Election Day this November 5th.
Chase Oliver, Libertarian for President, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.